Hello and welcome to the Conversational AI News Podcast. And today we're talking emotionally intelligent AI. I'm joined by Tom from Koios. Tom, hello.
Hi,
How you doing, man?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. How are you?
Very well, very well. It's good to have you here, Tom. I am very excited to be talking through the technology and the capability that you've
Yeah.
got because we got a preview at the Conversational AI, the mini summit recently. But would you, before we begin on the company, who are you and what's your background, Tom?
Of course. So, first of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Obviously, the event last week, a couple of weeks ago, was great fun. So my background, I am quite different, I think, is probably the best way to put this. I left school at 16, which gave my dad a heart attack. My sister's got an MBA, my dad's got a PhD, and at 16 I was like, I hate school. I am out of here. Education is the worst thing in the world. That I was a 16-year-old at the time, so it's a different perspective. But I actually ended up joining the British Army. So I spent 5.5 years in the British Army, included operational tours of Iraq, Afghanistan, all before my 21st birthday. And then after doing that, I had this kind of mini checklist to do when I joined the army, which was play football for the army, go to Iraq, go to Afghanistan. Ticked all three and was like, well, it's time to go.
Done.
Yeah, done. Served its purpose. All of my friends were at uni or whatever, and obviously they were graduating. I was leaving the army. They were graduating with loads of debt. I was leaving the army with no debt. I had savings, they didn't, which was quite a nice transition. And then kind of entered the big bad world. It was lucky I had those savings because my first job was agency recruitment. So I started working for a big US recruitment company, for which starting salary of £18,000 was certainly a reality check of living and working in Zone 1 London,
Right.
and then having £18,000 a salary in 2011 was Anyway, keeps you hungry, is what they
Yes.
said. Like, literally keeps you hungry. Spent 7 years in agency recruitment, and then I moved in-house and worked in talent acquisition at Spotify, pre-IPO and post-IPO, Apple and Snapchat. And that was the kind of grounding and understanding of kind of the world of human relationships that kind of led us to today.
Right. Great overview there, Tom. So, yeah, take us into today now. Talk to us about Koios. How was it formed? Where did the idea come from? And what's the service?
Yeah, of course. So we've actually gone through quite a transition, but it all started around psychometrics, psychology, something that kind of referencing back to my time at school. I hated school quite clearly, but something that was quite apparent was there were a couple of teachers that really got through to me, and I excelled, and I did really well in those subjects. The other subjects I really struggled in, not through lack of academic kind of capability, more the fact of I just wasn't bought in. I butt head was a teacher. I mean, I was a 16-year-old boy, right? You're always going to fall out with teachers, just who I am. But I started to get an understanding of, well, hang about, if you treat people differently and you communicate it, like, how does that work? And I suppose subconsciously I was been thinking about this for 15, 20 years. And the idea and the big thing was when I was at one of these big tech companies, they brought in psychometric testing as part of their hiring process, and it's been used for generations. And I mean, you could argue that it's used in the highest performing teams in the world. US Delta Force do psychometric testing as part of their hiring process to enter special forces, which you could probably argue is the highest stressed, highest performance organisation in the world. So they brought it in, but then quite quickly dropped it, because the method in which they were acquiring this information or gathering this information was very old, very expensive. It was self-assessment. I'm sure most of your listeners and most of the people in the professional world would have gone through some kind of personality psychometric testing, because it is incredibly valuable. If you as a human can understand exactly how the other human you're engaging with thinks and is motivated and likes to be communicated with, it accelerates that relationship. And you will speak differently to your mum, your dad, your friends from school as you would to someone you've just met, because you understand over time, subconsciously and consciously, how to deliver your messaging differently based on who they are. And that was something that always fascinated me. And that's obviously why organisations wanted it, because they wanted to have better onboarding, wanted to be able to coach them more effectively. And they only get a small amount of time really to kind of coach people in a company. So they want to make sure it's efficient and they can hit the ground running, and using psychometrics and personality and psychology is the fastest way to do that. So that's kind of how it started. But we wanted to change the way it was acquired. So myself and my co-founder, Martin, who PhD in computational science, computational social science, which is the application of AI to sociology, for those who don't know, wanted to change this. And over a kind of 3 to 4 year period, we bootstrapped. We're working on this in the background. We've been able to develop a series of models that are able to accurately predict and understand your personality and psychometric makeup purely from the way that you speak. So the acoustic and linguistic signature of your voice is a massive indicator of your personality, and kind of that's where we got to today.
Goodness me. So can you say a little bit more about how that works then? So you listen to me for what, a period of time, and then you can infer things about, go on, say some more. Yeah,
so there's about 2,500 data points in your voice. So linguistic and acoustic, the pauses, the speed, the rhythm, the emotion, the words that you use, the structure of your sentences are just some examples. So, I mean, a great example of this is the word fine. The way the word fine is delivered has so much context behind it. So
I can imagine, right? Yeah,
exactly. So those things that your teachers and your parents told you, and you're probably your manager in your early career, it's not what you say, it's how you say it, is scientifically true, essentially. So it's a massive, massive indicator of who you are. So that's what our kind of foundational model is based on. And we understand personality, and we did a lot of research around what obviously different sounds and different speech relates to with regards to personality. And we base ours on the Big Five personality model, which is really robust. Any behavioural or organisational psychologist, all of their research and all of their practice will be based on the Big Five, because it's the most robust version. Right. So if you haven't heard of it, it's probably because your company are still using Myers-Briggs, which, without going into too much depth, you ask a psychologist about Myers-Briggs, they'll probably come out in a cold sweat, because it's just not scientifically applicable.
Before we get to the use cases, because I can imagine quite a few, how does this tech work then? Are you taking an audio sample from me, real time? Say more.
It depends on the context. So we are able to analyze real time communications. So if you and I are on this at the moment, we can have our API running, and it's able to capture obviously snippets of your voice. So once we have 90 seconds worth, we can start running the algorithm. So from 90 seconds to 10 minutes is where we see the highest performance. In the 0 to 90 seconds, it's quite a rapid curve to kind of get to a level of accepted accuracy. And then from 90 seconds to 10 minutes, it's quite a gradual increase. Right. But then from 10 minutes, it kind of flatlines. We can't get much more accurate than that. It can be used retrospectively. So any kind of video communications or any digital form of podcasts, YouTube videos. I mean, we were just doing some experimentation recently where we're building a prototype of a product that we'll talk about in a minute. And we wanted different personas, and we thought, well, what better than just find some famous people this week? And we analysed Oprah Winfrey, we analysed Elon Musk, we analysed Donald Trump, obviously. I mean, why wouldn't you? Because you want to know about that guy, right? Rihanna, but just kind of see, so we could have some examples of different personalities responding to different things. So any kind of recorded conversation we can take from.
Then, okay, so use cases then. I can think of quite a few here, Tom. Where are you beginning?
Yeah. So with regards to our API, so just our ability to create the prediction, a lot of usage is coming from the recruitment space. Or interviewing space, which actually comes into venture capitalists as well. I mean, we're working with a VC firm at the moment who wants to be able to understand the potential founders. So every time somebody applies for funding or they submit their pitch deck, and they're asking them to send a 2 or 3 minute video about why they have this company. And that's a great, really rich audio source for us, obviously, because we can analyze that and provide the insight. But also for the VC, they are, especially at early stage, they're investing in the founders. They're not necessarily investing in the idea.
Yes.
So the ability to provide insight there is really valuable to them in recruitment. So obviously more and more recruitment platforms now are completely video based, but also a large majority of organizations, especially at the enterprise level, as part of the application process, ask you to upload a 5 minute video about why you're interested. I want to be the VP of sales at Coca-Cola because I've worked at PepsiCo for this amount of time. Blah, 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 blah. And because at the end of the day, you are hiring humans, you're not hiring CVs.
Yes.
So we're running the analysis on that and providing insights for them in hiring. Then also within the sales enablement space or essentially any relationship industry, whether it be sales, customer service, we are providing insights to the other human on the other end to say, okay, well, I know who I'm speaking to. How can I accelerate that understanding?
How does that work then? So I get that I'm calling your API, but I'm giving the audio to your API.
Yeah.
What do I get back from the API? Am I getting reports? Am I getting PowerPoints or something?
Yeah, so it depends on the use case. So the two main the main two APIs that are out in the market at the moment for us are our Talent API, which is essentially exactly what it says in the tin. It gives you a summary, like a nice, like a one-page summary, bit of an overview. This is you, and this is what his personality is like. This is how he comes across. And then we go into a bit more detail about how you like to communicate, how best to communicate with you, how not to communicate with you, because that's just as important as how to. What motivates you, and then very clear instructions on how to motivate you, what your business attributes are. So what people don't realise is actually a lot of really key business attributes that are based on personality, and that's hardwired from your teenage years. So, for example, I am as a person, I am at the kind of mid to high level of neuroticism. So I'm a very emotional person. I get a lot of energy from my emotion. I'm also extroverted, which means I'm always coming out of ideas. I'm thinking. I'm kind of thinking about what next. But I struggle with being sat down doing a really mundane task. I really struggle to do that. Whereas someone with a different personality to mine, so different big five structure, would excel in that task. So it just highlights, get Tom on projects where it's like, think about the future. That's where you'll get the best out of me. But then also the growth opportunity with me is I need to practice my kind of detail orientated stuff, kind of build discipline in my administrative tasks. So that's what we do in the talent world. And in the sales world, it's very much about relationship building. So yeah, say if you and I are having a conversation, I'm the seller, you're the buyer. It'll provide me with insights in how to communicate with you, and what kind of cadence should I be engaging with you. What kind of information should I be providing you with? Not just the type of information, but how it's delivered. So, do you want really detailed 10-page reports to every single data point, or do you just want a high-level information? Different personalities require different deliveries. That's the kind of stuff we provide in the sales space, and then also there's some other things to do with different kind of buying signs. So, for example, as I was saying, I'm kind of the mid to high level of neuroticism. The best way to sell to me, and this is probably going to give a bit of a secret to everybody who's hopefully going to listen to this podcast, trying to sell me a service, is take the deal away from me. Like create an element of fear or loss, and kind of use the emotional side of my personality to make that deal. If you were to use that technique with me, I'm more likely to respond because I'm emotional, I'm impulsive, I think with I trust my gut a lot on these things. If you were to use that same tactic with someone who had the kind of opposite personality to me, so someone who's very, very emotionally regulated, probably an introvert, and try to use fear or kind of time pressure, they'll just be like, okay, why are you telling me that? I will make my decision in my own time. So it's all about psychology and understanding the human on the other end.
Now, so if I was trying to pitch you then, Tom, is the best way of doing that, to go and do some research, find a podcast off you, find a video off you, run that through my Koios system, get some insights, then, I'm asking because I've seen mention in the past of call center style systems that will measure sentiment or just from tone of voice, or is the customer breathing heavily? But that's kind of a real time feedback. This isn't real time. I think is that right in saying?
Yeah. So ours is more about ours is a lot deeper than sentiment. Sentiment is but also sentiment will lead into how you are that day. So your emotion that day. If you've just come out of back-to-back meetings and you've just lost, or something's gone terribly wrong, and Vodafone call you because you need to renew your contract, you're going to be in a very, very different mindset that day than if you've just, it's your birthday, you've just closed a couple of deals and the world's amazing, blah, blah, blah. You'll be like, yeah, cool, yeah, let's go for the international calls. I don't even travel, but let's do it. Like you're going to, that's kind of sentiment rather than So that kind of, that's or behavior versus personality. Behavior can change and evolve, and personality is relatively fixed.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the kind of key difference.
So that would indicate that the use cases for the Koios technology, the two APIs you have at the moment,
Yeah.
is planned.
Yeah.
As in talent, as you say, people joining, or
Yeah.
I'm going to look at sales here, so I'm going to do my analysis before we do, before we interact. That kind of approach.
Yeah, it's absolutely. If it was a one-hit sales call where you're trying to sell me double glazing and it's not about building a long-term relationship, obviously if you've spoken to me before, you'll have that information because you may have had, or you might have bought that data or whatever. But predominantly it's about relationship building, which so B2B sales. It's about customer service or account management, etc., etc. So it's just accelerating that relationship between the two individuals.
Okay. Business model wise, how does that work? Give us a perspective on how, if I'm adopting to one or both of your APIs, how does the compensation or the business model work?
So we for our APIs we charge per API call. So for each individual that we analyze, that's essentially one ping each time.
Right, and then I would imagine there's a lot of people listening who are thinking of various different applications that you haven't necessarily explored publicly at the moment, Tom. How open are you to hearing from different use cases?
Yeah, it's it's a weird situation because it's an incredibly powerful tool, and it's kind of in the wrong hands, it could potentially be used. But then AI, you could argue, in the wrong hands of anybody, can be used in a detrimental way. But anyone who's looking to build better relationships, understand individuals who they're speaking to in more depth, to give them that advantage to, and I'm not saying advantage in a unethical way, but for example, we've obviously know each other a while now, but if I had like a how-to guide of how to work with you within the first 2 minutes of knowing each other, it would accelerate our relationship even further. Yeah,
yes.
It accelerates and everything, which is just a massive edge in any kind of. I mean, if you knew whether it be customer service, whether it be financial sales, obviously there's a lot of research we've been doing internally around how different personalities reflect are quite heavily linked to different investment strategies. Different kind of someone who's really extroverted is more likely going to want high risk, high frequency trading portfolio, whereas someone who's more conscientious, a bit more introverted, probably wants a more longer term investment strategy. And there's some research been done into that. So you think about how a model can aid in that, or whether it be in kind of big enterprise negotiations that go on, I don't know, hypothetically BAE Systems doing a negotiation with Rolls-Royce to do with something that might take 5 years to negotiate, and there's 25 people involved, and if over that time you're able to get the insight of, okay, we know that, I don't know, John Smith, he actually needs a load of detail, and you know exactly what kind of information to use to influence that decision. So yeah.
Is it fair to say that, I'm looking at it from an ethical standpoint here, is it fair to say that actually, your system will give a lot more accelerated, immediate perspective that, some individuals could probably infer, right?
Yeah.
Some people who are very experienced, if they've got, 3 minutes watching someone, they can go, I suppose you can begin to infer some of this.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about it. It's not necessarily that bad, right? Because I think some people can go, "Oh my god, this."
We aren't kind of like opening the kind of the box of dark secrets that people have. It's not like, oh, we know it. I mean, things like credit rating, right? Like credit rating, I understand why banks do it, but you could argue that if it's a B2B environment and you know that the seller has a really bad credit rating, you can be like, look, we've got to do this deal because you need that bonus because I know that you're in debt. That's an unethical use, right? Because that's private information. But actually, everybody in the world can build a relationship with you.
Yes.
And a human can do this already. So you think about, or I'm sure you've met numerous of them, the best sellers in the world. And
Yes.
I'm not
Yes.
talking Wolf of Wall Street. I'm talking people who are enterprise sales leaders,
Yep.
people who work at Oracle, blah, 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 incredible like chief commercial officers. You ask them what their difference is as a seller. It won't be, oh, well, I made more calls. It will be, I understood the human I was
Yes.
dealing with. And I was able to build a better relationship faster.
Whether they had that understanding written down, formalized, or gut, essentially.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
But gut's a whole lot of different. I've met a lot of individuals that fit that profile, Tom, and they're fantastic at interacting with you. Fantastic.
Yeah.
But that's because they've honed that skill.
You learn
right?
over time.
Yes.
Yeah. It's very rare you'll get a 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old in their first job who has the ability to just connect and influence C-suite overnight. That takes a lot of time. And the use case in sales, certainly what we're seeing, is it's not aimed at the top 1%. Because they can do it already. They're so good at. I mean, you can argue that. I think a good example of this would be in sport. I'm a Liverpool fan. Jurgen Klopp, his ability to communicate with individuals, he knew exactly what to say, when to say it, and how to say it, and that's how he got the best at. That's why people trusted him. And that is look, sales is trust. You're trying to build trust to that individual. If we're able to give the 21, 22-year-old new seller who's up against it, and it's like, right, you've got to do 12 enterprise deals this year, the ability to go, oh, I know exactly how to deliver my messaging for that individual because they've got their med pick, they've got their spice, they've got their frameworks, but a framework's a framework. A framework's not a human. You need to be able to transcribe and adjust that framework to the human. What we do is, that's a bit of a cheesy phrase, but we raise the floor. We don't raise the ceiling. Does that make sense? We're bringing everybody up to the same level rather than just saying the top 1% can do better. Right. No, it's about the other 99%, bringing them up and giving them the ability to be a top performer.
Gotcha. What are you thinking then in terms of roadmap? Because I'd imagine to an extent a lot of this is dependent on customers coming forward to you and saying, "Can it do this?" or "Could I use it here?" Yep. What are you thinking?
Yeah. So the big roadmap for us is actually human to machine interaction.
Right. Very interesting.
So human to human interaction will never be replaced in a large part, but actually a lot of human to machine interaction is changing and is evolving, and people have seen people like 11x and these kind of technologies which allows humans to interact with machines, which is impressive, but the machine is still emotionally dumb. And essentially communication, every time you communicate, whether it be email, voice, whatever, you're trying to do three things when you communicate. That is to speak credibly, that is to also communicate credibly, communicate logically, communicate with emotion. Machines are incredibly good at the first two, because obviously the power of machines, they have logic, they have credibility. But credibility is actually probably a bit of a blur, but actually the emotional side, machines can't really do that. Whereas with the huge acceleration we are now seeing between voice and machine interaction, but using our model, when you speak to the machine, we can then inform the machine exactly the human they're speaking to, and that creates the personalization on a kind of back end to allow the machine to go, okay, I know I need to speak to you in this way. I know I need to speak to Tom in this way, or blah, blah, blah. So we're essentially adding a layer to human to machine interaction that creates a deeper relationship, a deeper understanding, and is able to accelerate that kind of interaction. So
if you gave my agent or my ChatGPT or Claude, if you gave it or I want that because it's going to be better, it will then be able to formulate answers and present information in the most effective way for me to consume it.
Precisely.
That's very powerful.
Yeah.
Very powerful. Because I think it was only recently at the event, I think you were saying something like, you were touching on this topic, Tom, but you were highlighting that, the ChatGPT or any conversational AI, it gives the same answer typically.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, in the same way to everybody. Yeah. When actually it could be way more effective if it was emotionally intelligent.
Precisely. Look, there are some really cool technologies out there. I mean, Hume AI, a quite intelligent platform based in the US that we were talking about earlier about the sentiment stuff. So they can pick up, oh, you're getting excited, or you're really low. They can pick that up and allow, basically have their own LLM that's able to pick that up and then mirror and match. But actually, mirror and matching is kind of like stage one of emotional intelligence. Stage two is that I know how to adjust, and copying someone doesn't always mean that's the right thing to do. It's incredible. It's amazing. I mean, for those who haven't seen it, go and check out Hume AI. It's very, very cool. They've just released their second version. But obviously, what we do is to power both of those together. Our models and their models allow that whole another level. So, yeah, it's the way it's presented, the way it builds a relationship, and obviously using memory because of the memory we now have. Essentially, the machine will have a better memory than you and I. Quite clearly, every single conversation that we ever have is stored, and then once you engage again, it's, oh yeah, you spoke about how you were going abroad last week. How did it go? You're like, whoa, how do you remember that? But that's the kind of thing that I've always done as a human. I've always found that. I mean, one of the guys I used to work with, he was like, I know a little about a lot. It's kind of my kind of human USP. If someone says, oh, like I love field hockey, I'm like, oh yeah, like the GB girls team in 2012, they won gold, right? I always had little snippets of everything, and obviously machines can do that at 1000x level.
Yes,
but is that even relevant? And obviously, using personalization, you can use that. I think it's really important to note that since the 1940s, obviously when computers were first, or artificial intelligence, you argue with Alan Turing being the father of AI, back in the 1940s to today, the only way that humans can interact with machines was hard text. You input a button, you input a format or a sum, whatever it is, and it returns that exact same format. But because of the acceleration, especially the last 6 months, more and more human to machine interaction is going to be voice based. And we were speaking to a company like the back end of last week who specialize in real time avatars, human like avatars. It's incredible. They're quite early on. Really great business. Second time founders, they just sold their first business to Meta, so they're pretty good. And they've developed a way in which you wouldn't know if you were talking to a human or to an avatar. Right? It's that lifelike. But obviously, so they're very good at the body and the face and the voice. They're not the brain bit. They allow other companies to do, whereas obviously we have that brain. So for us, it's about it's whenever you. So what where we're seeing a lot of interest in this part of our business is coaching, so kind of human coaching, and for those who find L&D and ed tech interesting, like I said, a lot of people don't. It's actually $1 trillion industry. It's absolutely huge. Last year alone, in the globally, $534 billion was spent on learning and development programs. And that's professional. That's not schools and colleges. That is doing a course internally, and that only goes to probably the top 1 or 2% of organizations, because the only way to deliver this traditionally is by human coaching, and humans aren't scalable. I mean, Elon Musk might challenge that, but humans aren't scalable. So what we're doing is we're essentially creating virtual versions and emotionally intelligent kind of virtual versions of coaches to allow not just organizations to get more information, but allow a lot of these individual coaches, L&D managers to scale and monetize themselves. If you think about the world of coaching, has an incredibly long tail. You have a handful of big consultancies. Obviously, you've got the big four, actually KPMG do coaching, etc. But you've got the likes of Mind Gym, Arcadia, Black Isle Group, who do a lot of programs. But actually, a huge amount is individuals. So there's numerous people you could kind of find who are leadership coaches, and they work with C-suite, blah, blah, blah. But they only have enough hours in the day to do that coaching to those people. A whole organization would love to get access to that coach. But that coach isn't available, and also, can they afford £500 an hour for the administrator or the storeroom guy to get leadership from Jordan Peterson? It's never going to happen. But what they can do is go, well, why don't we create a virtual version? Yes, it's not replacing the human. What it does, it allows them to scale that human, and we can obviously train it. We can fine tune it on their knowledge and their information base and their theory and their technique. We then, in partnership with one of these avatar organizations, can create a human-like avatar. Whether you do a phone call with them, I mean, think about walking the dog in the morning and basically being like, I've got a big meeting this afternoon. I'm pitching I'm pitching to my manager. It's my first chance to kind of speak to middle management. How am I going to cope with this? You would love to be able to speak to Jordan Peterson around that, right? Not just him, but some kind of like mindset coach, leadership coach. he's not going to answer the phone to you. But if it's a virtual version of him that has all the knowledge, has delivery, is able to know you, because obviously using our models it personalizes and talks you through that. Okay, well, what are you trying to get out of this meeting? What are your kind of goals? How has it made you feel? Do you think there's anything in your personal life that you can use to embrace that meeting? All that kind of stuff. And it's scalable across the whole organization instantly in every language. Because obviously, because we can train it in English, because of the advancements in LLMs, it could be in Cantonese, it could be in Portuguese, it could be in French, 60, 70 languages instantly overnight. And every employee has that ability to engage with that coach within the business. It allows the coaches to monetize. It allows the individuals to have access to this information. It's a win-win for all those involved.
Can I take it in a slightly different direction there, Tom? Because the ramifications are just astonishing for everybody. What's your message or recommendation to those running conversational AI systems at the moment? We've got a lot of listeners who are responsible for conversational AI for telecom company, bank company, and increasingly they'll either be looking at some degree of audio or they're already using audio. What's your recommendation to them?
Remember the human. I think it's the biggest thing. You aren't building a conversational AI to chat to another conversational AI. There is a human involved in this process. You need to humanize it. And I think a lot of organizations, especially, and obviously there's some heavily regulated areas which are using conversational AI, whether it be financial complaints, obviously everything. They have incredibly strict workflows because they have to. But what about the human on the other side? At the end of the day, you're building all this technology to engage with a human, but all you're thinking about at the moment is potentially about what the machine is doing, not about how you get the human to get on site. And that's the big leap forward. I'd read some information recently. They believe that 85% of individual to business communication by 2030 will be human to machine, and whether that be through text, that is conversational AI, which is great timing, you, and I can understand why you're in this space. But that's where it's going. But there's it's the human side. Remember the human, and if you can get your conversational AI to build a relationship and build trust with the human, you're going to have more success.
And just make it better to communicating with individuals, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I received one of these virtual sales calls a couple of weeks ago about Irish whiskey. And within within a second, I knew it was fake. And then I asked it a question and it just like spazzed out. It was like, I can't cope. I think it was like, hi, Tom, have you been interested in Irish peat whiskey? And I was like, look, can I just stop you there? Would you rather have a fight with one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses? And because I knew it was a machine and it did not know what to do. It just went, that isn't something we've thought about. But we could get a case of Irish whiskey. It just literally a human would go, oh, that's really funny. Actually, I think I would probably. But
they could probably spin that into something, and in doing so,
humour you
make you
and
warm.
Understand you. And as a salesperson, or as a founder of a business, I'm always trying to build relationships. If someone did that to me, I'll be like, that's memorable, and I am gonna. And you can kind of go with it and go, how about I throw one back at you? And you build a relationship with an individual. So, remember the human, because that's why we're here.
What's the best way of those individuals doing something with you, right? Moving things on. You've got the API available. Should they be coming to your website, get Koios AI, signing up, interacting with you? What's the call to action, Tom?
Reach out to me on LinkedIn is a really good way. I mean, I've just kind of mentioned, obviously, you kind of heard the podcast or kind of seen the newsletters, etc. Because as you can imagine, everyone gets a lot of spam in their inboxes nowadays, so it's kind of hard to filter. Go to our website. We are actually building a new website that'll be coming out soon with a kind of holding page, but there is a wait list there. But reach out to me. We're always incredibly keen to hear about different use cases. So we are they're kind of fundamentally a white label technology. So we can either build your conversational AI for you, we can enhance it, and we can take that full ownership. I mean, there's a couple of organizations where they have a platform and they have some kind of conversational AI, but they're actually going to outsource that to us. So we will own that part of it. I mean, we've got an incredibly talented team internally that makes these agents phenomenally well. So we can do that for you. Or if you say, look, I've already got my conversational AI, we're experimenting with voice, I want to enhance it and come to us with a use case, then let's chat.
Brilliant. The final question I've got for you, Tom, is what's your favourite vacation?
I've only been to Bordeaux once, and it was amazing. I spent 5 days in Bordeaux before I had kids, and my wife and I just had the most incredible time. It's cheaper than you realise. Beer's expensive because they don't want you to buy beer. The wine is obviously, it is a wine town. It's got amazing history. They love the British. All of the pubs are named after British icons. So Houses of Parliament, the Westminster, the Trafalgar. It's all British named pubs. They have the Bordeaux Wine School in the middle of their square, in which every afternoon, whatever wines they were teaching with that day, they just sell the rest of them because like, oh, we've got half a bottle of this left. It's €3 a glass, and it could be like a 2,000 euro kind of like Premier Grand Cru, and they're like, well, it's open now, so
you might as well. Yes,
It's just amazing. The flight's about an hour.
Wow,
really easy to get to. Yeah, so Bordeaux, I think.
There we go. That was my left field question for you then, Tom. Good idea. Well, can I say thank you so much for taking the time, Tom?
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.